Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the board meeting for September 19th for Benicia Unified School District to order. And I would like to invite everybody to please stand and join me in the pledge. Where's the flag? Oh, it's here today.
It's going the wrong way.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, we're going to start with highlights, and I'm going to call on Dr. Young to please take us through the highlights for the evening.
Thank you very much. Welcome, trustees, and everybody who had an opportunity to join us tonight. We have some nice recognitions this evening, and we would like to start by welcoming a very special person, the County Superintendent, Lizette Australia Henderson. Come on forward. So Miss Lizette, I will just I'll turn it over to you. So these are two really wonderful two different categories that we're recognizing elementary schools tonight. So thank you.
Yes. Well, it's an absolute honor and a privilege to be here this evening, Madam President and trustees. As the County Superintendent of Schools, one of the best part of my jobs is to come to school districts and school boards, not only being in classrooms, but also to come and provide recognitions. Having been a classroom teacher and a school administrator for a number of years, I know the work that your teachers and your administrators and your boards put into making your school districts amazing places for young people to learn and to grow and to thrive. So I'm just thrilled to be able to be here this evening recognizing some of your schools. So the first school I'm going to recognize is Matthew Turner Elementary School. And I'm recognizing Matthew Turner Elementary School for School of the Year for the One School, One Book program, and also for being recognized from the PBIS Coalition, the Positive Behavior Intervention Supports Coalition, for their silver level recognition. And we have been working with Benicia Unified School District over a number of years with positive behavior intervention and supports. And you were one of our first school districts to really embrace the notion of positive behavior intervention supports and those multi-tiered systems of support for your young people. And that's something you should be very proud of. When we initially asked our school districts, who really wants to go down this path, Benicia didn't hesitate, and that's something that you should be very proud of. And Matthew Turner Elementary School certainly was one of those schools. We currently are about 70% of the county has PBIS schools in place, and but I will tell you that Benicia was at the forefront. So good for you. So Matthew Turner Elementary School. Hi.
Thank you very much. Hello, I'm Stephen Slade.
Hi,
principal.
Stephen. Wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And who do you have here with you?
Great team here.
Oh my gosh. And what this illustrates is that it really is the entire village at the school site. It's not one program or one department, but it's really the whole school community embracing positive behavior intervention supports for your students. So I have a certificate here for you, suitable for framing, by the way. And I have an envelope here for you, so we want to make sure that you keep it nice before you frame it. So congratulations
Thank you very
to
much. It's an honor to receive this from you. Thank you
Well,
very much.
it's an absolute privilege for me to recognize you. So I don't know, Betty, what would work for you?
No.
We're gonna all duck down.
Oh, let's see. Here's your The next recognition that I have is for Joe Henderson Elementary School, silver level recipient for positive behavior intervention and supports. Wonderful. And again, Joe Henderson is one of those schools that exemplifies being out at the forefront of this work. And so we recognize all of their energy and efforts and time invested in the young people of the Joe Henderson community. So congratulations to you.
I will pass that right on.
Yeah.
Let's see, that's Joe Henderson's folder. And also Mary Farmer Elementary School.
Yay.
For the Bronze Level Award of Implementing Positive Behavior Intervention and Supports. And Mary Farmer Elementary School is also a site where we have a program for students with moderate to severe disabilities as well from the county program. And I will tell you, every time I have set foot on any one of these school sites, they truly exemplify, just like Mary Farmer, they truly exemplify inclusion. And you are a school district, again, that throughout Solano County has been at the forefront of full inclusion for your young people and providing the supports that our young people so desperately need. And so we are proud of Mary Farmer Elementary School as well. Yes. Nothing less. And nice to meet you. Congratulations.
Great. Yeah.
So congratulations to each of these schools, and I encourage you to continue to lead the way in your work around multi-tiered systems of support. It's all about helping each and every young person to succeed, and you certainly have the right framework and the mindset to do this work. So congratulations to all of the educators in the room, and thank you to the board for your leadership and your support.
Thank you.
So thank you. So I need to just express my gratitude as well and kind of echo what Lizette was saying. We have amazing schools and we are extremely proud of how hard everybody is working and all the good things that are going on for our children. So thank you. And these recognitions are absolutely well deserved. So thank you again. And with that said, we were so excited about the awards that we need to backpedal for a moment because I kind of skipped the agenda around, if you notice.
I thought that came fast.
It did come fast. I wanted to get to the good stuff. So anyways, I just need to call for a motion from my board that we approve the agenda as written.
I move that we approve the agenda as written.
Do I have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the agenda passes. Thank goodness. Thank you, guys. Okay, now we'll move on to our next one, which is our reports, and we'll start with our student reports.
Good evening, board members and Superintendent Young. Yesterday, a group of students went to Oakland A Sports Center Education Day. We had opportunity to talk to the people from front office, trainers, and broadcast media. The A's won in the extra innings. We have several learning through interests scheduled. Our first one was today. Partnering with Sustainable Solano, several students visited the front yards and gardens throughout Benicia to apply sustainable practices. We have our culinary and trade tours coming up in the next 2 weeks. Our mentor program has also started. We really appreciate all those that volunteer and spend their time with us. We are completing our whole school SRI reading screening test and we'll start on our whole school math screening test next week. Me and all the other students at Liberty High are very excited for all the upcoming events and opportunities. On behalf of Liberty High School, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. So for Benicia High School this week, we have a football game tomorrow versus Berean Christian at 4:30. Only JV's playing because the varsity game had to forfeit. But next Friday we have a home game against St. Pat's, and this Saturday is our color run. At registration is 9:30 to 10 a.m. It'll be $15 for registration. Next week, high school voter registration begins. And then our blood drive is on September 26th if you want to donate blood. And we have the club fair next Thursday, September 27th.
BHS has started an in-school SAT prep. Will take place in Access for 1 month, October 3rd to the 24th. Student IDs can now be used at public school or public libraries. On September 25th, our school is screening Finding Kind Bullying Prevention and promotes kindness.
Thank you. And our next report is the superintendent, and then ladies, I will dismiss you after that. So for our superintendent's report.
Very good. Well done, guys. I would like to take a moment to introduce a new team member in a new role, and I would like her to come to the podium so I could talk about her. Erica Dudley, come on up to the... Well, welcome, Erica. So Erica, as you know, because you approved her position a little while ago, is our new coordinator of child development and adult education, and a little bit about Miss Dudley. So Erica has been employed at Benicia Unified since August 2011. She and her husband have been married 16 years and have 3 boys, ages 13, 10, and 5. Wow. Whom all attend Benicia schools. She has a Bachelor of Arts in Child Development with a minor in Theater Arts. She has 12 years of teaching experience in preschool and kindergarten. She loves being able to watch the child's creative process and providing new experiences and opportunities for learning. With her minor in theater, Miss Dudley likes to incorporate dramatic arts into the classroom. She started her journey as the Mary Farmer after-school teacher. A year later, she was the first preschool teacher at Matthew Turner Elementary. Then she went back to Mary Farmer a year later and as their preschool teacher. She eventually became the head permit teacher for the child development unit, overseeing curriculum for the preschool programs. And as she steps into this new role, she is excited to see the possibilities that will arise for students, families, and communities of Benicia. And we are very happy that you are joining us in your new role. Welcome.
Thank you.
Say anything to the trustees?
I'm just thankful for this new role, that this possibility came about, and I'm excited to see more growth. I mean, when I started, there was only 2 preschools, and now we have 7, and just our enrollment in the after school is overflowing, and so it's very exciting to be a part of that and to help teachers grow and improve quality in all of our programs. So I'm excited.
Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome.
So I have 2 more recognitions this evening, and we'll be taking a little break after I go through both of them. 2 individuals, 2 very special people to the system that have done some amazing work for us and that are moving on. And I'd like to start with Dr. Carolyn Patton, if you could come to the podium. So Dr. Carolyn Patton has done some really good work for us in her role as Director of Student Services over the last six years. And the scope of her work has covered a wide swath, from all areas to special education, to working with a psychologist, to discipline, to attendance, to problem solving, to just a number of areas. And Dr. Patton, you've provided some really solid leadership to the district over the years, and Dr. Beeson and I leaned over and we're talking about your role with PBIS and the REACH survey. You helped us implement that. Just the list is very long. So we thank you for your service to the district and congratulate you. Dr. Patton got a promotion, a new job. She is now the Assistant Superintendent of Special Education, right, for the Sutter School District. Sutter SELPA, and that's big, right? Because the SELPA, I think there are 16 superintendents or 12, or a number of superintendents that Dr. Patton will be, overseeing that broader program and working with all of them. So we congratulate you and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
And we're going to come back up for pictures and when we talk to the next person. Did you want to say anything about your job, or are you excited?
Fear and trepidation. Yeah, I actually this is something that's been a career goal of mine. I was just waiting for the right timing. So it's a little. I just want to thank the district for releasing me so quickly. I know that's hard on a district to let somebody in this crucial of a role move on with 2.5 weeks notice. So thank you, Dr. Young, Dr. Beats, and Dr. Gill for stepping up and allowing that. I would just like to take a minute and just recognize Benicia as just an amazing community for students and families. And I could go on, but it has been my pleasure to serve this community for the last 6+ years. I will be overseeing Sutter County. SELPA has one large school district, Yuba City, a smaller district, Live Oak, and then 8 single school, very small districts, 3 charter schools that are part of the SELPA. And it's a very, as you know, has a lot of rural, very spread out communities. So some challenges with serving kids with disabilities when a lot of the schools our districts are less than 400 kids in a district. So I look forward to the challenge, and I learned a lot here. So thank you.
Hey, Dr. Patton, we didn't want to let you go away too easily. You do have a presentation tonight. She does. So.
I do. Oh, you mean I might run, but no, I will be back to do it.
Pardon? Oh, we're going to do that. Yeah, we'll do all that. So we'll come back up to that in a moment. Maybe we should do it now. Do it now. All right. I'm getting my order off. So why don't you come back up, because we do have a wonderful plaque for you, and we'll take a picture of you. Thank you. All right. Come
Right, exactly. So many instructions.
Thank God, actually. So the next person that I would like to, it's an absolute honor to spend a moment talking about, and it's difficult because you work very closely with this individual for the last 4 years. It's Betty Jensen. If you could come to the podium, please. So, Miss Jensen, it's been my honor to work with you over the last 4. This is my 5th year now, and just a little bit about Betty's background. She's worked in the district, I think, going on 23 years. She has this really kind of an interesting trajectory through the system. She started off as noon duty at Joe Henderson, and then she started working in the attendance office at the middle school, and then with her intelligence and acumen and alacrity, creativity, soon moved into the permanent role in attendance at the middle school. And then she was there for a number of years. And then I believe the last 12 years, she has been the superintendent secretary. The title of the position is chief assistant to the superintendent. And Ms. Jensen, you have just done an incredible job, and you are going to be sorely missed. Your knowledge of the system is broad. You're a problem solver. Your interaction with the community is amazing. Board policy, have we ever met anybody who's better at working with board policies than you? But you just bring great elegance and intellect and integrity to the job. And being a superintendent, my first superintendency, I can't believe how lucky I was to have you as my chief assistant. So we are going to miss you sorely.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for what you've done for the whole school district. You've served us well. And you could leave us feeling very proud of what you've achieved here, very, very much. So thank you deeply. Thank you.
And I would like to say that I've been extremely blessed to have all the positions I had in Benicia Unified, except the noon duty aide. That was like that was the dumbest job, but important, I know. But no, I've been very blessed, and the people that I've worked with, and the board trustees that I've had the privilege of working with. It's been many over the years that I've been here, and I feel very privileged and blessed. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Sushi, would you like-
So Betty, I would like to say a few words as well. And I know it shocks you, but I've known Betty a very long time. Betty was the attendance clerk when I was a teacher at Benicia Middle School. And then when I became the assistant principal at Benicia Middle School, even though you take those classes that tell you how to develop those schedules, it was like, thank God Betty was there. We spent a lot of time together working on those master schedules, and she was a wonderful teacher for me as I moved into that position. I left you for a while, and then I came back as your board member. And I have to tell you, as a board member, and I'm sure I can say this and that it will reflect for everybody, your ability to keep us on track and where we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to be doing and be on time for us as well. She makes us look really good, and you make the role look really easy. And I am forever grateful for the opportunity to work with you, and to be able to come back again was very exciting. So thank you.
One last thing, I promise. The other thing that I love about Betty is she's always in a good mood. Every day, that beautiful smile. Every day she shows up and just sets this positive tone in the office, and it just makes a huge difference. So thank you.
So Betty, because your board is so grateful for all the things that you do and all the things you have done for us, we have a special gift for you.
And we want to add that it's not just us, but your prior board members, Gary and Peter and Andre, also wanted to share their thanks as well.
All right, we're going to try and bring everybody back to order. So hopefully everything else that we have for this evening could be as much fun. So we'll start with, how about if we just go to some board reports? Do we have any comments on? Do we start with Yosemite and kind of just roll back down? Okay, Sherry?
Last week, I attended at the high school Bite of Reality, which was a great program put together for kids that the seniors in the AP, I want to say econ class took. They came in and they were given options of really expensive products to buy to the least expensive products to buy, and they had a budget based on what their income was and how to spend it, and some had to go get like some help at the bank to have them guide them. So it was a good eye-opening experience, I think, for a lot of the kids. I thought that was a great program. And then I'll be here tomorrow for the PBIS presentation tomorrow to see what that's all about with our district as well. So, and our garden is up and running at Mary Farmer. And if anybody knows anybody that wants to volunteer a couple of hours on a Friday after like 10:30 in the morning, they could certainly use some assistance there. No experience necessary. Thank you.
I was able to make last week the back to school night for the high school, and it was very impressive. And to expand on what Sherry was saying, my kid is in that economics class, and I'll tell you, that is one heck of a program. they pick a career, but the career they pick, they've got to live off that salary. So if they pick a career and then they want this big mansion, and suddenly they find a negative cash flow, and so they really have to look at, okay, you're looking at a career and you're looking at a lifestyle. Does your career choice support your lifestyle choice? And I mean, things that I wish I would have had when I was in high school. I could have avoided a lot of mistakes in life if I would have known. So for Miss Westerman, who does the program in the econ classes, I really appreciate it. And I was able to tell her that it's a very good program.
I also attended Bite of Reality and worked with the students for the one day, and agree with everything my colleagues have said, and appreciate Miss Westerman's work. She brought in the program working with Patelco Credit Union, and it is a program they do all over the state. So if there are other schools that wanted to look into it, like at Liberty or something, there's another option there. But the fun thing about it was they have upgraded it so that it is an app on the kids' phones. And so that they can go back and look at it, and they can change things, and they can figure out, well, if I, do this instead of that, or if I, don't spend. I had the childcare table, and I was cracking up because the students had choices. They were told, oh, you have a 5-year-old, you have a 2-year-old, this type of thing. And the clothing was the most hysterical part. It was like, do you want brand name clothing, JCPenney clothing, Ross store clothing, hand-me-down kind of clothing, And the boys were like, I want brand name clothing for my kids. The girls are like, you can get that stuff at Ross, And so it was quite fun because they got the reality check, and they'd come back and they'd like, excuse me, Miss Holdine, I need to change to maybe JCPenney, please. And so it was great. They really had good opportunities to think about different things and how those things impact your budget. So I appreciate the econ teachers putting the effort into making this a whole group activity for all the high school seniors.
Okay, well, I wasn't quite as much fun this week, but I actually attended as a district rep for our CAP meeting, and CAP is the Citizens Committee for Valero. They had some really interesting things occurring at that meeting. It actually went like 2.5 hours instead of the normal hour. And part of that is they had an amazing presentation. This is the 50th anniversary of Valero in our city. And they brought this historian, our local historian. He is a retired professor from Davis, and he did this whole presentation and this PowerPoint about the history in Benicia and what Benicia looked like then versus what it looks like now, and what's now on the property, what wasn't. But he went through all of these different leadership, both from the state and from the city. So he was fascinating, and no one wanted him to stop. We were just like gobbling it up. Just, some things that sounded kind of familiar and some things that we didn't know at all, depending how long you were living in the town. So it actually is a phenomenal presentation, and we got a book that with the 50 years of Valero that day. So that was really great. They also shared with us some of the decisions coming down from PG&E. If you recall, PG&E was in bankruptcy, and they have to come up with a plan of how they are going to be working with these blackouts or brownouts in the communities. And Valero has pledged to work very closely with them because they're putting right now what they consider concerning levels on the refineries, because they're working as a team of 5, because there are 5 refineries in our area. They were talking about wind control and weather, that they're saying for a lot of our towns and communities are just totally unrealistic. For example, 25-mile-an-hour winds in Benicia, it's like, that's every day. So, and that's what they were saying was going to be one of their measures for shutting power down. So, they have to work with the courts and with PG&E in order about what's going to be realistic for the communities, as well as to meet the requirements of the the bankruptcy. So it sounds like it's going to be interesting, and I think more to follow. They're making a presentation at City Council shortly, so we should be seeing and hearing some more about that. They've also got all of the PowerPoint presentations that they share with us are on the website, and they're also now on the city website as well. The fire department has a team that they have hired that is now doing a full website with each of the meetings and the types of meetings that are being conducted. So this way, anybody can access it easily instead of worrying about trying to get on Valero's website or get onto the Citizens Committee website. You know, they're right there on the city website. So you kind of like a one-stop place for everyone. So I thought that was also a great move on their part. So, and Jeff talked about that day as well. So other than that, it was extremely informative. You know, we got another good history lesson from them as well, so I appreciated that. The one thing I did get to do that was kind of fun is I went to Grandparents' Day, so I took about 2 hours off one afternoon, and I got to do that. And of course, basically what that means is grandparents is equal to you spend money, because what it's tied to book fairs at the schools, and basically that's the kids take you shopping. So guess what happened? So, you know, but anyways, it's fun to do that. You get to, you know, have lunch with your kids. Though it did hit me as I was going home, and I started to cry, and my husband's shaking his head, and I said, I've been doing this for 6 years, so it's the end of an era for my oldest grandson, because this is his 6th year in the elementary school. So middle school, I want some really good activities so grandma can come. So he's done with his elementary school grandparent day celebration, so that was hard. So anyways, okay. So now we're going to move on to comments from the public. So members of the public may address the board at a regular meeting on any item within the board's jurisdiction. Cards may be completed requesting to address the board. They are available at the back table and may be submitted to the board secretary at the meeting. The governing board allows speakers to speak at regular meetings on agendized and non-agendized matters under public comment. Comments are limited to no more than 3 minutes per speaker. By law, no action may be taken on any item raised during the public comment periods, and matters may be referred to staff for placement on a future agenda of the governing board. Do we have any speakers? No. All right, then we are going to move on to the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered by the board to be routine and will be approved by the board in one motion. There will be no discussion on these items unless members of the board, staff, or public request specific items to be pulled and discussed. Are there any comments from the board? Can I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the consent calendar passes. We have, Dr. Holguin, a gift?
Need to do a roll call.
Oh, we have a resolution. I'm sorry, I didn't get down that far.
For the gifts, we have a donation of plotter paper from, which was given to BHS, and it comes from Susan Sicaro at Brown and Caldwell, and the value of $1,000.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that.
All right, and we do have a resolution on the consent calendar, which we need to do an individual vote. So the resolution is 19-2005, which is a declaration for obsolete property.
President Ferrucci,
Yes.
Trustee Holguin,
Yes.
Trustee Maselli,
Yes.
Trustee Seda,
Yes.
and Trustee Moss.
Yes.
Okay, so now we're going to go into discussion items, and the first one is a public hearing, and the public hearing is regarding the composition of potential trustee voting areas associated with the district's transition to a by-trustee area election system in advance of the preparation of a draft plan. So I need to close the board meeting, and I need to open the public hearing. And we are going to have a presentation and an explanation of this now from,
We have representation from our legal firm that we use, Fagan, Friedman, and Full Frost. So Jonathan Salt is joining us this evening, and he has we also, as part of this process, we engage the services of a demographer, and
this is Andrew Chinnapong from Cooperative Strategies.
Cooperative Strategies. So Mr. Salt will take us through a reminder of what we agreed to do last time and what the process looks like, and then obviously as you gavel the hearing for this evening. So welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, trustees, Dr. Young, cabinet, staff, community. I'm John Salt, along with Andrew Chittapong. We'll be helping the district through this transition that started about 10 days ago.
Yeah.
All right. A little bit about the California Voting Rights Act, or CVRA, which you probably
speak into the microphone. It's on now.
Okay, thanks. Sorry about that. A little bit about the California Voting Rights Act, or CVRA, mainly as a reminder for the board and for new information for anyone in the community who wants to provide feedback throughout the process. The CVRA prohibits at-large elections, which means trustees run from no matter where they live, and all voters in the district vote in every board election. If that system impairs the ability of members of protected classes from influencing the election, it might violate the CVRA. The only, and no intent is required. So unlike the Federal Voting Rights Act, where it's pretty hard for a plaintiff to claim that a government agency is actually violating it, in California, it's very easy for a prospective plaintiff to file suit against a school district or a city alleging a violation because there's no intent required or no intent to discriminate required. Another reason why this is popping up around the state and while the district's been proactive about it is because a prevailing plaintiff is entitled to attorney's fees and expert fees, but if a school district or a city were to successfully defend itself, it would not be entitled to that same right. And some of these court decisions have gotten into the multi-millions of dollars. Every single school district or city who's tried to defend itself for having an at-large system has lost and been forced to pay a lot of money to the other side and change systems anyway. So the district's being proactive here. The only safe harbor to stave off a claim is to transition to a by-trustee area election system where the district will be divided, since there's 5 trustees, into 5 roughly equal population areas, and board members will be elected from each trustee area by the voters in that area. Doesn't affect anybody's current term. You've all been elected lawfully. You serve out your full term, but over time, depending upon where folks live, eventually it'll be 1 per area. Right now we are in step 2. Step 1 was on September 9th when the board started this process. Step 2 is now 2 public hearings that are required. They are required to be held prior to the demographer ever drawing a map. It's for an opportunity for the board members and the community to give direction for some ideas they might have about how this map should look. And so I'll hand it over to Andrew to talk about the district's demographics, which is a key component of this process.
Thank you. On the screen, you can see the district's demographics. We are using the 2010 census data, and that is because that is the last official recorded numbers by the government. On the left, you can see a general geographic profile of what your school district looks like and what cities encompass your school districts, as well as what cities are outside and neighboring to your school district. On the table, you can see the total population within your school district, and that total population is 27,133. And as one of the requirements when we're drawing these areas, each area should contain equal number of people. So if we divide the 27,000 by 5 for each of the board members, each area is going to contain about 5,400. We do get a 10% variance when we're drawing these areas, so that gives us about 540 between the smallest area and the largest area.
And the reason they can't necessarily be exactly identical is because the census blocks or the building blocks or the Legos for creating these maps, and those are different sizes, different shapes, different populations. So to get an exact even number is probably not possible, but the courts allow a little bit of a variance of 10%.
We do have the demographic breakdown within the school district population, with the Hispanic Latino being the largest of the protected classes, being at almost 12%, the white population being at 66.02%, African American at 5.28%, and the next largest protected class is the Asian population at 10.86%. And we also have the demographic breakdown for the those who are 18 years and older, and that number comes out to be almost 21,000. We're really going to focus more on the citizens voting age population, also known as CVAP, and these are your eligible voters within your school district. On the left side of the screen, you can see a density map of where the Hispanic Latino community members live, of your eligible voters for the Hispanic Latino community. So lighter colors representing less dense areas of the Hispanic Latino eligible voters, and the darker areas representing more dense areas. You can see that there's no real concentration of this particular community within your school district, so they're pretty evenly dispersed. And then we also have the demographic breakdown for the eligible voters on this table here, and that number comes out to be 21,083 people.
And so if you look at this chart and you see, for example, the Hispanic Latino population is about 12% by citizen voting age population. But when you divide the district up into 5 roughly equal population areas, inevitably some areas will have a larger Hispanic population and some will have smaller, similar with Asian, African American, et cetera. And so those areas that have a larger concentration will create increased influence for those protected classes in future elections. It's not going to be a majority. It's not going to be 51% Asian or 51% Latino, but it might get up in the high teens, the low 20s, and that is satisfying the CVRA.
And just to briefly go over the demographics for the eligible voters, and Hispanic Latino community is about 12%, the white population being almost 68%, African American at 5.16%, and the next largest community is the Asian population at 10.07%, and so on and so forth. And then we also have the same numbers on the table, but with a different citizens voting age population. This one focuses on the Asian population. So this color is blue, so don't be confused with the bay at the very bottom of the school district. That is the bay, that is not the Asian population down there. But also similarly to the Hispanic Latino community, they're evenly dispersed. You don't see a concentration within your school district boundaries for the eligible voters for the Asian population. And then here we just have a general blank outline of what your school district looks like, along with the freeways and geographic areas, just so you can get an idea of like how you want these areas to be drawn, maybe giving us some ideas or providing some insight of which areas are best.
And that's pretty much the point of tonight's meeting. The kind of feedback we're soliciting from the board, from the community is, I think neighborhood X, neighborhood Y should be in the same area. They make sense. Or I just came up with these, I think the 780 or 2nd Avenue makes sense as a boundary line because it just seems like it works with the communities that might divide. Things like that are the kind of feedback the demographer would like prior to preparing to draw maps that will slice up the community a little bit. So here's the criteria for how the maps will be drawn.
So our criteria or guidelines when we're drawing these areas is that we're using the 2010 census. Each area should contain equal number in their citizens, must be equal in their population, the 10% variance, comply with the US Constitution, equally practical.
And as we mentioned, you're not going to get exactly 5,460 people or whatever it is, but as equal as practicable, complying with the Federal Voter Rights Act, which is trying to ensure that the citizen voting age populations of those protected classes can be increased if possible. Essentially, you don't want to, if there was a concentration, you wouldn't want to crack that concentration because that would essentially dilute their voting power. The districts need to be geographically contiguous, so you can't start Area 1 on one side, stop, and then say this other section's also in Area 1. And then you cannot favor or discriminate against an incumbent. What that means is the board members' residence can be considered in drawing the maps, but it can't be a primary consideration for, I'm going to draw this line this way to make sure this happens.
Also, following geographic areas as best as we can, respect communities of interest, be compact and contiguous, and respect incumbency. It is a consideration, but it cannot be a sole consideration when we're drawing these areas.
And so again, after this process, it seems like we're going to divide the district up, but it's still one district, still one board. Everyone represents the entire district regardless of how they're elected, and doesn't change attendance boundaries or anything like that. It's just changing how trustees are elected. And so quick scheduling update. Today's the first of 5 public hearings. There'll be one more exactly like tonight in a few weeks. Then the demographer will take that feedback and work on the maps and we'll release them to the public. There'll be 3 public hearings where the maps will be displayed and folks can ask questions or comment or make suggestions about the maps throughout the process until the 12th, when the board will vote on one of the then available map options. Thank you. We will
Are
stand
we
by if
allowed
there's
to
any
provide
questions.
comments now?
Yes.
One of the things I'd like to think about with our maps is not dividing up by elementary school boundaries, but really having each trustee cross as many boundaries as possible so that there still is a consistency that you're serving the entire population. Because all of our students eventually end up in the same middle school and the same high school. And we have worked very hard over the years to assure as equitable as possible educational goals for all of our elementaries. And I wouldn't want to see that become, I wouldn't want to see that change because somebody says, well, this is my school, this is my elementary school, and so I'm going to make sure that it's better or worse or
Right,
what have you.
and that's an excellent thought and very common. The actual physical school site location is irrelevant, but the attendance boundaries matters a lot. And so if you can have an attendance boundary for an elementary school intentionally in 2 different or 3 different trustee areas, folks will have, essentially pull to feel their an allegiance to those schools, in addition to their obviously fiduciary duty.
Carolyn.
We'll stand by to answer questions.
Just right away, I need time to think about a lot of this, but right away I'm worried about because we have like socioeconomic conditions where people, it's a kind of an up the hill, down the hill kind of thing, and the way you have this, I know it's proposed, but the
Oh,
way
this is just a map. Those are roads.
oh, those lines are
Oh, yeah, those lines are just roads.
But is that going to be factored in so you don't have like people like a trustee area that's like got a lot of the houses that are super expensive and
I think it would just depend on how far away they were
everybody
from.
needs to talk to the
I think that would just depend on how far away they were from one another, because the number one criteria, the requirement is equal population per trustee area, and so I think that would just depend on, I guess, where those neighborhoods were.
So one of the things, let's just clarify, is we don't have any maps yet. No. So, but I mean, I think that's really important because you know what? When I first flipped on that slide at home, I thought that was a tentative map as well, just because of the way the roadways and stuff are emphasized. But we don't have any maps yet. What we're trying to do tonight is to make sure that people become aware of what we're doing and why we're doing what we're doing, and then provide some input or suggestions about what we think is important. And I think that's a really good point because our communities in some ways we're gonna need to be real cautious about that. One of the other things that I'm just gonna throw out, because I was having a reaction to something that Dr. Holguin said, and because I was thinking that at first too, is you've got to figure out how to cross multiple school boundaries as we do that. But then, so another side to that, and I'm wondering if this is the way I don't know how to think about this, okay? So I'm just going to go out and say that I'm not happy, but I know that this is something we have to do, is we need to look at the population in the areas that we're going to be dividing, because in the populations, we will be hitting multiple children that go to multiple schools, that are going to an elementary, a middle, and a high school. I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking out loud because I'm trying to wrap my brain around this as well. Of how to move from just knowing it's all of Benicia, and now we're going to in some way parcel Benicia out. So I don't know. I'm just wondering if that's an alternative, instead of saying that it's not the school boundary as much as it is to be sure that within an area we have elementary, middle, and high school families represented. Is that? Tell me you think that's crazy. I'm good with that.
So I think this is what my question is I don't know. Oh, sorry, Christine Mitchell, Benicia Middle School. How do you justify using 10-year-old data and guarantee that the boundaries that you're creating are equitable, because we all know how much change happens in 10 years, especially with the housing crisis and people, we've had children that are now living with multiple families in one household. So how do you guarantee that we're going across not just school boundaries, but that you are actually representing people equitably in those 5 sections?
Thank you. That's a
It's a
great
great
question.
question.
It's a common question. There's two things. There's the total population data, which is from the census, and then there is the protected class group data we showed, which is a rolling estimate that the census puts out every year. It's a 5-year rolling basis from right now it's 2013 to 2017. So those estimates are updated. But in terms of total population, the reason you use the census is because that's the last time there's an actual count of every nose of the district from age 1 day to age 150. Everything else would be just an estimate. And because they're estimates, you can't guarantee that you're keeping that population equality. Similar with how Congress, every 10 years, they kind of redistrict because they want to keep that same perfect number, so to speak. And so similarly here, in 2021, after the next census, the district will have to take a look at whatever map it's picked, impute the new census data, and see if you're still within that 10% variance. And if not, it's not as complex of a process. You just tweak the lines to get into population balance while still keeping the other principles intact. And so if there is a particular neighborhood that the community or the board knows maybe has had a lot of growth or perhaps has had a lot of exits over the last 10 years, the demographer can use that 10% that we're allowed to either intentionally underpopulate an area that we know actually has more people in it to keep it balanced. So there might be less changes in 2021.
At our public hearing on 10 days ago, September 9th, when we decided that we were going to move forward with this project, one of the things we talked about was that should we wait until the next set of data comes out or not? And the danger in doing that is we'd essentially be waiting 2.5 years for the next set of data. And in that time, if we get the notice of a lawsuit against us, it ends up costing us hundreds of thousands of dollars more. And so we felt it was a better option to go forward now and then tweak our data, then tweak our maps in 2 years. No.
Right, it's not locked forever.
Right.
And I should mention that, thank you for the lawsuit situation. So 2 years ago, the law changed in how these types of lawsuits can be initiated. It used to be a plaintiff would send you a demand letter and you could either change or not change, and eventually maybe they would file a lawsuit. And even if you settled it right away, it would still cost you 6 figures just to say, okay, fine, we'll switch. Now the statute says that if someone sends you a demand letter, hey, your system violates a CVRA, you better switch. Even if you immediately, okay, next board meeting, we're switching, and they do it in this very fast timeline. The person who sent the letter is entitled to up to $30,000 for reimbursement costs for the work they put into writing that letter, which would include hiring a demographer, legal fees, et cetera. And so essentially there have been letters sent all over the state to school districts, cities, water districts, where they're immediately on the hook to change and owe somebody $30,000. This district switched in advance to stave that off.
So I think one of the other things that we discussed at our last board meeting, which was a special board meeting to talk about this too, is the fact that it's getting very close in Solano County. Either many of the districts and or cities are already either in the process or have gone there. And our closest neighbor right now is also in the process. So we're kind of feeling like in some way, I think our discussion was we're kind of hanging out there. We're just waiting for someone. We're inviting that letter in, and we didn't want to stand out that way. And the idea of giving up our monies that we get to support our schools because someone gives us a letter, that was really what was not sitting well with us. It was like, let's do it. We can do it on a reasonable timeline. It will impact the 2020 elections because we will be doing area voting at that time. But at least it would be on our terms and not on their terms. And it would be with our demographer, not with his demographer, and that's where some of that big money was coming in as well.
Yeah, Ariane Whiting. So I'm asking about how the public is informed of this information. Like, is there like a responsibility to like notify? Like, does the district have to notify like every single person, or just the people in the school district? Or and also, how do they give feedback on like the public hearing? Do they have to be here, or can they?
you understand the question?
Yes. There a couple parts of the question. There is no requirement to notify every person who lives in the district. That said, I think the district either has sent letters home or will be sending letters home to parents with the schedule and a little bit about the transition. Believe there is or will be a link on the district's website that will have information as the process goes along, including an email address for anybody who can't make it to a board meeting, and that information will be relayed to the board. So for example, when the maps are released, I can't make it to a board meeting, but I really like map 2. That'll be relayed to the board.
But I think another part of that question too, it's not just the parents in the community. It's every citizen in this community. We have tremendous support for our schools from the senior citizens in our community. So I still think we need to be discussing how that's going to happen.
I forgot to add that there's also going to be newspaper advertisements taken out for each public hearing as well.
Talking about how to inform.
And I have a question. So in terms of this process, so what has been your experience in similar size school districts or populations in terms of being able to map this out properly so that it is an equitable process for all the members in the community?
I think every district, regardless of its size, treats the process very differently. You'll have some communities where you'll have, 20 people at every meeting, really in favor of a certain map option or really passionate about it, and others where you won't have anybody show up to anything. In terms of sizes, we've helped districts that have been over 200,000 to districts that are as small as 2,000 or something, where there were 600 people per trustee area. And so it's just, I think the way that the law is currently written, while it's not illegal to have an at-large election, the case law has sort of seems to be pushing everyone to make this transition.
Carolyn Fields, Benicia Middle School. What is part of this process determining what's going to happen if the areas are set and there's not a candidate from a certain area that wants to run, and then 3 in another area, and how?
Excellent question. So obviously it's going to depend on how the maps look. I have no idea where the board members currently live, but in a hypothetical scenario, if 2 of you are neighbors, there's a good chance you'll be in the same trustee area. And so that would mean there'd be at least one area where there is no current trustee. I'll use this hypothetical. If there's 2 trustees in the same trustee area and both of them have term until 2022, obviously that area will not be up for election in 2020, which means that the open area, of course, would. If there are 2 candidates or 2 trustees with term both expiring in 2020, obviously that area would be open for election in 2020, as would one of the open areas. Where it gets tricky is if you have someone whose term expires in 2020 and someone expiring in 2022, that means that area cannot be open for election because there's already a trustee in there through the next election. And so that would open up a different area as well. Long story short, it's just going to depend on where everyone lives and how the map ends up looking. And then the board, that in and of itself may set the sequencing of elections moving forwards. Or if there's multiple options, for example, if everybody lives in this exact same neighborhood on the same cul-de-sac, then the board would have, I guess, a choice of which 2 or 3, depending upon the year, comes up at which time. And the law says that you're supposed to factor in the intent of the CVRA when making that choice. So probably the area that has the largest protected class influence would be one that should come up earlier than others.
And if we had a position that wasn't an area that nobody ran for, then we would go through the appointment process like we just did with Ms. Moss filling a vacancy. But prior to that, we would have to kind of go, the staff has to sort of get out and encourage people to run. And so, but that's the way we asked the same question at our last meeting too, is that if there's a vacancy, then we have to do an appointment process.
And it would be from the open area.
From the open area. We'd have to find somebody from the open area to do an appointment. Yeah. And so it's always that representation.
What I think is going to be really hard is when it comes election time and only that small area is going to be involved in a school board election. that's going to totally change, I think, the behavior of the people in Benicia. So it's gonna be, I know you're shaking your head now. I know, I know.
That's
right.
So 2020, there are 2 board positions open. 2022, there'll be 3.
Correct.
So it's always going to be on a rolling schedule. So there's not, by intention, there's not an election where all 5 people are running at the same time. And so 2020, it'll be 2 of the areas.
But only 2 areas will be voting.
Right.
So that means so the other 3 are going to just, it's going to be very complex. Right. Mm-hmm. No dumb questions. Come on forwards. Just say who you are and grab the mic.
Laura Rourke, Mary Farmer. My question, I don't know if you can answer this, but I'm like, I wonder if the filing fees and all that would change if it's because they putting out different publications. But no? Okay, cool. Cool. Thank you.
Any questions or comments or feedback besides what we've received so far about ideas for where some lines should or shouldn't be drawn or which neighborhoods should or shouldn't be together? If not, we'll be back in, I think, exactly 2 weeks.
So can I just ask one more question on the maps? And that you could tell me if I'm reading them wrong, but there really doesn't seem to be a tremendous imbalance on the maps that you're displaying for us tonight. Is that right?
Correct. It's not tremendously imbalanced. It's not, there's not one neighborhood that this is,
Right.
this particular group lives here. And
Which is really the whole premise of enacting this law.
We asked that too.
We tried.
It's a great thought. I'll say this. We've seen school districts receive demand letters claiming that, this protected group is 7% of your population and therefore they're underrepresented in at-large elections, which is similar to here. On the other side of that, we've seen school districts that are 85 or 90% Latino also receive a demand letter. Unfortunately, with the way that the law is written, with how hard it is to defend oneself, yes, at the federal level, you're supposed to try to create a majority-minority area, which is not possible in this district, just looking at this map. But there's not really a way to be safe from that kind of litigation unless you transition this way. Even if it doesn't create a significant increase, it will create an increase in at least 1 or 2 areas.
Question is for our staff. When does the newspaper advertisements go out? Or have they, or when do they?
Or the magazine.
Or Benicia Magazine?
So the first ad went out Sunday. And
Which
then
publication?
just the Benicia Herald. And we'll continue to put those out. We didn't put a full timeline, I don't believe, in there. I think it was just announcing the first public hearing. So we probably need to put another one out with the full timeline.
So can I request that we consider putting it in the Benicia Magazine? I know the newspaper is there, but the reality is the publication does not reach.
So the Benicia.
I mean, I think there's like 1,000 people that subscribe, and the magazine actually is delivered to every
It
home
is a
in Benicia.
2-month out. If you give her something now, it'll be in 2 months. She's way far out that she publishes, because I've worked with her on articles and ads before, and it's too far out.
Maybe on social media, but
Website.
even social media. I don't know. I just maybe this is worth putting a flyer and doing a mailer.
So
Should we
staff,
discuss that?
yeah, so staff will have about, we'll work with legal about, the requirements regarding notification to the public. We did send out the one letter that was crafted by you. Thank you. It was mailed out to all users. and then we'll talk to legal about other ways to get that information out.
So it went out to all users within the district?
Yes.
Did any of you recognize that? Okay.
Yeah, Fagan Friedman wrote that letter for us, and that letter did have the the background and the timelines and the hearing dates. That went out to everybody, and then we can talk more internally about the other ways of broadcasting that.
Well, thank you for your input. It was really appreciated.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so at this point, do we have any other questions? This public hearing is closed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And I'm going to reopen the board meeting, and we are going to go on to 12.2, which is the report and discussion on the California Healthy Kids and the REACH survey.
Very good. I'll tee this one up. So this is Dr. Patton's last presentation with us. Welcome back to the podium, Dr. Patton. So Dr. Patton will be talking about, like you said, the CHIC survey and the REACH survey, which is an instrument that Dr. Patton and I have been particularly intrigued with over the last 3 years, and I think the staff has as well. It gives us a lot of telling information about students' experience in our district, and we use this information in school plans and try to use it to influence the experience for kids in the district. So welcome back, Dr. Patton.
Okay, well, we'll try and make this brief and amazing since it's my last time to speak with you guys. So it is about two different surveys, the California Healthy Kids Survey and our REACH survey. So I'm going to go over both of them. I want to make sure I get this thing going.
It's not your fault. It's
Oh.
it's a gremlin in here.
Okay.
So on the screen, it's advancing. It's not.
It's not advancing on
in
the TV.
communication.
So everybody circle around Georgina. We're going to get really close tonight.
Try the other one.
You all have
Yeah,
it.
but the audience.
The audience doesn't. And
You
so
have to present. It's. Yeah. It's
Bring a chair. Scootsy in.
I know, there's just a couple. Come on up.
Yeah. One more time. Why won't it come up? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. Well, okay. Well,
Okay, now
Try
try.
again.
Now
Now
try.
it's- now it should work.
Now try. We think it's right.
There it is. Woo! Technology. See, it's because Mr. Sharif stood up. All right. Whenever technology comes. Okay, so tonight it's just giving you an overview. I am not going to go into details on these surveys. That would just take us a study session. But I do want to give you a couple of examples of how the data is used by our staff and about how the community can use this data. And then just talk a little bit about next steps with both of these surveys. Just to remind you that the California Healthy Kids Survey and the REACH survey are both aligned to our LCAP goals, creating a collaborative team of highly engaged staff that support the academic, emotional, and social success of all of our students, and then also increase parental and community engagement and awareness. And then also our new superintendent's wildly important goals of all students will feel a sense of connectedness and belonging to their school and community. And this is one way we are looking to measure. So why do we collect the Cal Schools or the California Healthy Kids Survey? So just a reminder that the California Healthy Kids Survey has several parts of CalSUMS. So it's the student survey, parent survey, and staff survey. And also what we won't present, but you guys have received it several times from me, and we can attach it again in the board report. It's also available on the CDE website, is our overall school climate and safety. So it is very similar to the old AYP, where they kind of group everything together and compare you to similar schools and to all schools across California. So it does give you a ranking. But we do want to measure student well-being. The California Healthy Kids Survey looks at academic, physical, social, emotional, and mental support. It looks at your school climate and as far as engagement, safety, achievement. And then it's now a state requirement. It is one of the approved surveys that can be used for the LCAP. We also are required to give it because we get to pay money through the county. And it is recognized as part of the requirement to do bullying and suicide prevention from CDE. So those are all really legitimate reasons to continue to give the California Healthy Kids Survey. So why do we give 2 surveys? If we're given the California Healthy Kids Survey, why did Dr. Young and I look at the REACH survey and add the REACH survey? So just a reminder, California Healthy Kids Survey is free to the district in the manner that we give it because the county pays for it under the two-pay money. We actually do pay a little bit of money to have the REACH survey done. But they're very different surveys, although they interrelate very well. So the California Healthy Kids Survey is a behavior-based survey. When the students are answering questions or answering questions such as, do you do this? And if so, how often? Do you get in fights at school? Have you seen fights at school? Do you smoke? Do you drink? Do you engage in this? Whereas the REACH survey asks questions about relationships. Do you experience this with your teachers? So it's not your behavior necessarily, it's how are you experiencing the behavior of adults in your life? So a very different perspective. It's also the California Healthy Kids Survey tends to be external environmental things such as safety, drugs, alcohol, tobacco, whereas the REACH survey tends to be internal types of things like goal setting and delaying gratification. So again, getting to very different aspects that are both important to make sure our kids are in a good, healthy place to learn. So I was at the at the California Healthy Kids Survey training the other day, and we talked about this quite a bit, and talking about all of the research we have around brain stem, brain cell research. So if you think about that fight or flight response, if kids are not safe, if they've been experiencing trauma, and this is not necessarily trauma at school, but thinking about all of the trauma that's happening in the United States for a lot of kids, we can stay in this kind of a reptilian brain place of constantly being on the alert. Even if you're not in fight or flight mode, you tend to jump back into that lower brain stem, which keeps your safety. It's like, am I safe? Can I be here? Once that's taken care of, then you can go up into that middle part of your brain, which gets into your emotions, your sense of endorphins. Am I loved? Do I belong? It's not a physical safety, it's an emotional safety. Until those two things are taken care of, you can't really operate fully in the frontal lobe of your brain, which is where you can make decisions and access new learning and bring all of that knowledge into your brain and create long-term memory and reasoning. For those of us who've been around for a while, this new brain research really matches with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Maslow came up with all of this before we were even able to do brain scans and even able to see what happens in the brain when people are afraid or even they see frightening pictures. So when you overlay the brain with Maslow's hierarchy of need, you can see that he talked about psychological safety, physical safety, having food as that basic need, and that you can't really go up into those higher levels until those lower levels are taken care of. And so it fits really nicely, not only with what we know from researching just behavior of people, but also now what we know from looking at brain scans. So when we think about it in terms of learning, we know that kids cannot learn at school if they're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or scared. This kind of comes from even substance abuse. We know that people are more likely to abuse substances even if they're trying and they're in recovery, and this affects some of our high schoolers if they're in this state. When you get hungry, angry, lonely, or scared, you're more likely to take that first drink. So we want to make sure that our kids are not in those states, that they're coming in absent of those things. So when we look at the research around the California Healthy Kids Survey, this has been around for years, and they've done lots of research, and these are correlational studies, so we cannot prove that it's a cause effect. But what we do know is when you have high scores on the school climate index, meaning you've got the things in place that have kids feeling safe, connected, etc., that those schools that have those great scores on the California Healthy Kids Survey also have positive student development, also have higher teacher retention, lower dropout rates, effective risk prevention and health promotion. So all of these things correlate together. So what that does is that helps us to know that when we give this California Healthy Kids Survey and we look at the data, we know that that data will guide us in the direction we need to go. One of the questions that comes up, and I actually got this from one of our staff members the other day, is, well, do kids ever lie on the California Healthy Kids Survey? And that's a legitimate question, because if you think that kids may not be telling the truth, then you have to question the data, right? Well, one of the things you have to look at, and as we look at some of these tables, is yes, there may be one or two kids that lie, but there is a computer program that looks at each individual student's answers to the questions and looks for consistency across it. We also know that if kids were not telling the truth, the data would be scattered all over the place. Like if a whole bunch of kids were just randomly answering, then we wouldn't get the same trend data from year to year and cohort to cohort. And we do. We've been given this data in this survey for years, and we see that the trend data is very consistent. So in order to for kids to do that, they would all have to get together and say, okay, next time we take the California Healthy Kids Survey, we're going to show a decrease in use of alcohol for the next 5 years. And they're not doing that. So we know that as a group, while one or two kids may not be telling the truth, as a group overall, we know that the data is pretty accurate. I'm putting this up here mostly for you and for the community, because one of the really exciting things, and Betty would be really excited about this if she were not retiring. Every year that we give the California Healthy Kids Survey, we get that year's data. And then we have to create our own graphs to show the trend data. Well, California and West Ed finally got together and they created a dashboard. And so it's open to the public. And so you can go on the dashboard, and the graphs I'm about to show you are from that public dashboard. So you can actually look up by a district or by a school the trend data and by question. So we no longer have to put it into Excel and try and figure it out ourselves. So if anybody is interested, we only give the 7th, 9th, and 11th. So you would be looking at the secondary, but this is the website you would want to go to if you want to dig into the data for Benicia Unified or any other district in California. And it's it's very, very user-friendly. Okay, so so here, I'm just going to slide through some of these graphs. I'm not going to really talk about them unless you want to stop me and actually have a conversation. These are really super small, so I tell you across the top, it's grade 7, then grade 9, then grade 11, and then Liberty, our alternative school. And the graphs are basically for the last 8 years, because we give the California Healthy Kids Survey every 2 years. So you'll just see the trend data that as school is perceived as safe. It's pretty much stayed the same, with a little bit of drop this last 4 years at Liberty. We've had some issues with fighting and things like that, and I think that that's affected that data. Overall, the goal for the California Healthy Kids Survey is that you want 80% of your students to be meeting the target. We are not there, nor is our other districts in the state. But when you think about RTI and all of those things, what you're really striving for is that 80% of your students their needs are being met with your base program. We know that for a variety of reasons, we're not going to get 100% of our students feeling safe. Some students do not feel safe anywhere, not at school, not at home. They have emotional issues. But if we could get it up closer to 80%, that would be great. As you can see, we're not there, and so we have some work to do. But it's also interesting to me that, with the exception of that 11th grade dip, we haven't seen the drastic change in safety and the feelings of perceived safety in Benicia that many other districts are seeing with their students. So while it's not necessarily good, it's not going really down like some of the other school districts are. Adult caring relations, this one again, we have a little bit of a dip right there in our 9th grade. The high school is working on that and working on ways that they can have students feel more connected. Overall connectedness, and this is belonging at school, so this is being part of clubs, not just feeling connected to teachers, but feeling connected to the school overall. And then this is meaningful participation. Do you do things at school that are important to you rather than just what the teachers and staff want you to do? This one we've talked several times about. This is chronic sadness or hopelessness. And this is rated by, the question is, have you felt so sad or hopeless that you've stopped doing things you would normally do for 2 weeks or more? A real sign or symptom of possible suicidal ideation or chronic depression. This is something we've really addressed in our district, but as you can see, we're still seeing an upward trend at those upper grade levels, our alternative kids and our 11th graders. Suicidal ideation, again, I shared this with you when it first came out, the Liberty, the very big spike in Liberty, and we've had lots of intervention going on over there, and we've done lots of training with the staff and some support groups with the students. This question in the past has not been asked of our middle schoolers with the new California Healthy Kids Survey because suicidal rates are going up so high. With middle school and even older elementary kids, there is a question on the upcoming California Healthy Kids Survey for middle schoolers. Current drug and alcohol use, this is past 30 days usage, and that is showing that continued downward trend. E-cigarette usage, what's interesting is Benicia gave the California Healthy Kids Survey 2 months before Jewel came out, and all the other districts saw a huge spike in their e-cigarette usage. We're really interested in seeing what our survey data is going to look like now that we know that we have lots of issues with that with our high schoolers, just anecdotally. Okay, I have one more slide I'm going to talk about at the end that I threw on about e-cigarettes. So I'm going to move on if there's no questions on California Healthy Kids Survey. I would really encourage the public and those that are interested to go to that website and just kind of poke around with it. So, so the California Healthy Kid, or the REACH survey is scored a little differently. You're looking at basically the students that are below the goal, approaching the goal, meeting the goal, or exceeding the goal, and they're in color bands. And then they do some statistical analysis to come up with kind of some comparative. So with the the REACH survey, you're not looking at trying to hit a certain score, but more you're comparing the scores across each other for that school. And the reason being is it's all about strengths and weaknesses, and the staff looking and saying, okay, we're doing pretty good here. And overall, this is where we're really kind of, our kids are falling behind or are not reaching their goal. So we want to do some targeted activities in this area. And it's really interesting that we saw this with Liberty. When you look at their REACH data, they took it really seriously about kids with goals and delayed gratification. I'm going to show you district data, but when I get to that, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Liberty. So the first one is relationships, and these are the things that are, all the things that reports on here are district-wide data, not school data. We do have the school data available, both in the superintendent's office and student services office for families and to look at, and we have it electronically that we can email out to folks. So relationships, it's expressing care, challenging growth, providing support, sharing power, and expanding possibilities. So overall, as a district, you can see what we really want is less of the orange and the gold and more of the purples. So this is an area that we're really focusing in on, and one of the reasons that Dr. Young and Dr. Beatson created that goal of connectedness, because when we look at our data, it's not to say that we don't have loving teachers and caring adults, But in some of the ways, if you look at those specific things of sharing power and expanding possibilities, you can love somebody and you can be caring. But this, when you think about developmental relations, that's developing them into an adult. So don't think that it's, when you look at this, don't think, oh gosh, the teachers in Benicia don't care about kids. They do care about kids. It's these specific skill sets that are developing them into their own relationships. So a new thing on the Reach now is they ask kids, of all of your relationships, do you have strong relationships? And again, this is really small, but the first one is parenting and then staff, teachers. And the more strong relationships, the more diverse strong relationships, the stronger kids are in their ability to overcome obstacles and being resilient. So if you look at the kind of that blue, almost a quarter of the pie, those are our students that do not perceive, and again, this is self-report, that they have any strong relationships with any adults. No community members, no parents, no staff. So when we look at that, that means that we've got a whole group of kids that haven't been able to identify somebody. And again, it's not necessarily that there's not somebody that does care about them. That student can identify, cannot name one adult in their life that cares about them. So, so that's something that we really, again, are focusing on. When it comes to our areas of strength, the next two are really areas that overall Benicia Unified has consistently scored very high in, and that's this whole concept of effort, and that you, when you put in effort, you're rewarded for it. And our kids are high achievers for the most part. Our community values effort, and the kids have learned that. And they see themselves as having this idea of a growth mindset. And so that's an asset for them. And this was an area, this one, and affirmations or aspirations, which is goal setting, delayed gratification, that while the district overall was very high in, Liberty was really low in. And so Liberty set specific goals to improve that for their specific students. And if you pull out the Liberty data, you're going to see that they made tremendous growth in the kids reporting this last year, delayed gratification and goal setting. Cognition is the belief that you can get smarter, that you can focus even when things are hard. Again, this is an area that we're kind of in the middle on. We have some of our students believe in this, and then some of our students really struggle with this concept. They kind of have that, while they believe that hard work pays off, they're not quite sure that they're able to learn things that are difficult and persevere through them. So another area of growth. And then we've talked about this quite a bit. This is connecting learning to the real world, connecting learning to what kids think are important. And it's also kids connecting their learning to what's important. So teachers helping them see that you're learning this because, why do we want to learn this? And so this is an area that we really need to look at and grow. It's also an area that we see the most significant differences between our kids of color, where they're not scoring as high as our white kids. So this particular area not only hits us overall as a population, but hits some of our diverse groups. So next steps, we will give the California Healthy Kids Survey. It's interesting, the county liked our idea of giving the California Healthy Kids Survey in the fall so that they can get the scores back earlier, so we can start actually addressing them during the year that the kids took the survey, instead of giving it in April and not getting the scores until the next school year. So all of the districts in Solano County are going to be giving it in November. We have staff has chosen to give it again to 7th, 9th, 11th, and all Liberty High School students. So similar to last year. It will go out to all parents and staff. As much as you can, please encourage parents to complete the survey. It takes about 20 minutes. That's our biggest challenge, is get enough parents to complete the survey. It is online, so they can do it from the comfort of their home. We will give the REACH survey to 7th through 12th grade in the spring, because that's when the kids have been with their teachers for the entire year, and we would expect them to have developed those relationships. We have kind of a modified REACH survey for our 4th and 5th graders that we give. We don't do as much of the statistical analysis, but we do look at their developmental relationships. We will continue both at the district level and the site levels to analyze the data as it comes in and set goals. Each of the schools have a goal in their site plans around either the California Healthy Kids or the REACH survey, or both. And then there's a whole host of tools, and with the California Healthy Kids survey on that same website, there is now toolboxes of just resource upon resource of how to, once you've chosen a goal area that you want to improve, some resources for how to make those shifts both at a district and a school site. So we'll continue to use those resources to move the needle. Okay, so I took the liberty, since I'm leaving, you guys, I went to the BYAC meeting, and since Gary is no longer here, he would have probably brought this to you in his board report. So I slipped an extra slide in, just because of all of the information now about deaths from e-cigs and vaping, and what's been going on, and the fact that our California Healthy Kids survey data didn't look like we had a problem around e-cigarettes. There is a handout in the back with all of the information from the National Youth Tobacco Survey and all of the things that the federal and also the state government is doing around youth tobacco usage, e-cigarette usage, and deaths. And this is a very telling graph. If you look, this is starts from about 10 years ago, 2011 to 2019, tobacco use, cigarette use from youth, and this is from the youth survey, and whether they smoked in the previous 30 days before the survey, and you can see that tobacco use was becoming almost non-existent. And then e-cigs came out, and we are up to over 30% of our kids nationally that are using e-cigarettes. And I would guess from talking to the administration at the high school and how many they are confiscating on a daily basis, that we're probably right in the ballpark with that. So, so there's work being done at the federal, the state, and at the local level. The city is doing some work around this, and we're certainly doing work around this as a district. It's a major problem, and I just wanted to, again, indulge myself mostly to just be one more voice that says vaping is not safe, and it's particularly not safe for teenagers. And the effects of that are really super scary. The city and BYAC is putting together a public service announcement. They are filming. Some of our local stars are in it. And it will be released hopefully in January. It's called Hidden in Plain Sight, and it's to help parents understand what various vaping tools look like, and how to search their children's bedroom if they so choose to do that, but how to really protect their kids from vaping. So be looking for that. That should come out. It's called, again, Hidden in Plain Sight. So yeah, so that's all I have for tonight.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Any questions? My last formal meeting, yes. All right. Well, if there are no questions, great. I actually did one board presentation in my career with you not asking any questions.
Well, I'm sure, give us a second. I'm sure we could come up with some.
No, I'm running.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to 12.3. I'm sorry? Okay, we're going to move on to an update and discussion on the low performance student block grant with Dr. Beatson.
Sure. So, are you in need of televised? That's right. So I will describe what's on my screen.
There you go.
I'm going to start and then flip through this if that's all right with you.
This is just an update. I'm going to go through it rather quickly, but as you know, we received about $520,000 last year from California Department of Education to support our students who their term are low performing. And those are not our unduplicated students, so they're not our students who are free and reduced lunch, foster or homeless youth or English learners, or our students in special education. So other students who were low performing as deemed from the state test. Basically, what have we done? We looked at a lot of data, we collected a lot of information from our stakeholders, came up with a plan to spend this money over the next 2 years, this year and next year. It is one-time money. But basically, all of it funneled down into the creation of our 2 district WIGs, wildly important goals. All students will feel a sense of belonging, and all students will be reading on grade level by 3rd grade and stay at grade level. I think I went over all of this. You approved this plan last February. The other thing that I'm trying to click on 2 things and forgetting one. The other thing that we have to keep in mind as we do this is that we are in differentiated assistance, and so that also played into this development of this plan. I'm going to skip through the next couple of slides because we've talked about them already. It was just really about how patterns emerged from the data, and that led us to the development of 9 areas to focus on, or 9 activities. And we are so fortunate because we've got great staff in this district and teachers, and so we put out this sort of checkerboard, if you will, and said, we've got areas that we want to create some teacher leadership groups. And about 35 teachers came together. Some of the folks are here in the audience, and chose which topic they wanted to work on, determined a leader for those, and have been meeting. They met through the end of the last school year and then have started up again to really take some ownership over these particular areas. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of them and the work that's been done. So the next several slides really just go into detail about those 9 different areas that we're working on to support our low performing students. This particular one, knowing students by name and need, we know that's one of the things we have to figure out is who are the students who we're not meeting their needs, and what's their story. And so we have a team of teachers that has been working diligently, going site to site and reviewing records of students and really trying to look for patterns and themes about what's happened. Are these students, what they're finding is many of them are students who have moved in after they have not at a kindergarten year or a 6th grade year, but moved in along the way. So, but they're doing these file reviews, and then they're going to come back to us with some findings. This next one is student-teacher ratio. I believe on your PAL tonight, you approved the hiring of 13 reading tutors. So we're super excited to offer an additional support in our primary grade classrooms, K1. They will start in a couple of weeks. They're getting training tomorrow on a reading intervention or reading program called Literacy Footprints. And each kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade teacher will have 1 hour, approximately 1 hour of additional support in the classroom. The idea being that our most struggling readers are going to get a double dose of direct reading instruction. So it could be that the classroom teacher gives 1 hour or gives a reading lesson to the group, and then the tutor does the same, or maybe the classroom teacher says, I want to do both, double dose with the lower group, and then the tutor does a higher group, but to give that double dose. We've got ways to welcome our new students so that they have that sense of belonging. Another one I wanted to spend a minute on, I talked a little bit about it at our last board meeting, but we launched an informational and brainstorming meeting about a citywide reading campaign. And so the city has agreed to partner with us. It's super exciting. We had probably 25 people in the room really talking about what are we already doing to promote literacy, and this idea that language and literacy counts and matters from birth to 5. And so we really have to figure out how to reach that population of families and students. And so I'm in the process of creating a smaller steering committee to then say, okay, we've got all of these ideas from this larger group. Let's really create a plan and then do a launch. And I will tell you, our district librarians, I meet with them once a month. They are on fire, and I was telling them about this when we met last week, and then over the weekend got an email. They want to do a story stroll, kind of like you used to do the wine walk. So the kids would get passports and they would do this story stroll downtown. So there's lots of great ideas about how, no matter where you turn in the city of Benicia, we get this message that reading is important, early literacy is important, and we're all about that. I'm just, like I said, if you want me to go back and talk about any of these further, I can do that. But the last one I wanted to talk a little bit about is this data systems and universal screeners or benchmarks. We have purchased a new platform that will go along with PowerSchool. It's called Performance Matters. And we're experiencing some frustration just within the length of time it's taking to get up and running, because they're building our whole platform with all of our data. So it will talk to every assessment tool that we use. It'll bring in our Swiss data, Dibbles data, every assessment. And so it's like a one-stop shop. So you'll be able to go in, pull up a student or a class, and you'll get a dashboard of whatever information you're looking for instead of going to multiple programs and trying to pull that data together. So the teachers will also be able to build assessments. All of the release items from the state test are in there. So it'll have high functionality. It's just taking us a little while. We're going back and forth with the company. So that
we're going to put attendance in there too.
Because it's hooked to PowerSchool, all of our demographic information, all of our attendance information, our suspension information, everything will be in there together. So if you really want to dig deep and find out what's happening with students or classes or whatever, teachers will have access to that information as well. And then the other piece of this particular group that's working is looking at what are some, there's lots of words. We call them benchmarks sometimes, or progress monitoring tools. Universal screeners is another one. But a baseline assessment that we would give to all students in reading and math that is easy to administer and gives us data really quickly. So then we can look more deeply at the kids who are struggling. Because right now, our teachers are spending a whole lot of time administering these assessments, and it just takes a long time. So how can we simplify that? So that's what is next on the docket there. So I didn't go through all of them, but that work is happening, and we're really excited, and lots of great help along the way. So, yep.
Superman.
I think I have the next thing too.
So we're going into, I'm sorry, I'm pulling up my computer as well. It just kind of went offline. We are going to move into a non-consent item right now, and that is going to open up another public hearing regarding sufficiency or insufficiency of instructional materials. So I'm going to close the board meeting, and I'm opening up the public hearing on instructional materials and the status of the instructional materials.
Sure. So every year, I need to bring to you a resolution for sufficiency or insufficiency of materials. And this is to ensure that all students have what they need in their classrooms to engage in the instructional process. And so we, at the end of every school year, from my office, we send out, please fill in what consumables you need, how many students, look at your next classes, and we order what we need over the summertime. We get it out to schools, and then in the fall, if there are extra students, we do the same thing. And so we are 100% on track. We don't have any issues that have come to our attention, and so everything is just fine in this area. And so, I don't ask for a. Are there any questions?
Okay, do we have any questions? Okay, do we have any comments or questions? Okay, so hearing no comments or questions, I can close the public hearing, and now we can move on to right. So we have a resolution 19-20-04, and we will need a roll call vote. And 19-20-04 is a resolution that says that we have no findings for the materials, correct? Okay. So do I have a motion to accept the resolution?
I make a motion to accept resolution 19.20-04.
I second that.
All those in favor say, oh, no, roll call, please.
President Ferrucci,
Yes.
Trustee Hoaging,
Yes.
Trustee Maselli,
Yes.
Trustee Seda, and Trustee Moss.
Yes.
All right, the resolution passes, and this meeting is adjourned.